Hello everyone, you are on the Good Job channel. I am glad to see you on my channel. Please subscribe and like me. Thank you very much. Also, write comments about this video. It's very nice. And here is my story. Fashionable family psychologists today claim that the first serious crisis in a relationship occurs after the first year of marriage. Christopher would have liked to argue with them. She and Vika have known each other for only 6 months. And sometimes she can't help but feel as if she's been living with him for 15 years. Tonight was no exception. He warned in advance that they were going to Avalon. She agreed, and at the last moment, she again wanted to change everything. As a result, Christopher, like a fool, sat at an empty table, buried in his phone, and spent almost half an hour persuading Vika to drive up. Do you know how many cool girls there are on the dance floor? Alexandra responded to such blatant blackmail with an angry emoticon, was silent for 5 minutes, and then finally agreed to come. They met at a party celebrating the end of their second year. Christopher helped pass the session to a classmate who, as a sign of gratitude, invited him to a party organized at his parents' house. Christopher knew almost none of the guests, but chance brought him together with 3 future translators. At first, Alexandra seemed cold and arrogant, but as they drank drinks, the ice between Christopher and his new acquaintances melted, and in the morning he discovered Vicky's number in his phone. The guy hesitated for several days, but when he finally called, he immediately understood from his voice that his call had been awaited for a long time. A week later, the first intimacy happened, and soon Christopher and Alexandra officially became a couple. For the next semester, they lived a fairly normal life for students. Christopher reluctantly interrupted his memories and looked at his phone again. The romantic evening was frankly not going well, and sitting alone at a table for 2, Christopher began to look at the flexible female bodies on the dance floor. From the second floor, the entire central area was clearly visible, and there were not many people in the club yet. He noticed Oksana from a parallel group who was having a blast in the company of her friends. One of her companions, as Christopher remembered, was called Angelica, but he did not know the others. The girls also paid attention to him, and a minute later, the whole 4 came up to say hello. Having quickly gone through face control, Alexandra unsuccessfully tried to find her and Christopher's table. She had never liked this club, and today it was especially out of topic, because the girl wanted to spend the evening in a completely different way. The last intimacy she and Christopher had was 3 weeks ago, and although Alexandra would never admit it to him directly, the needs of her body were much higher than their random hookups where necessary. Fortunately, her parents and sister went to the dacha, and the apartment is empty today, but instead, her boyfriend dragged Vika to this moronic club. Its huge areas resembled a labyrinth. The waiter, from whom the girl asked for directions, directed her in the other direction. At the bar, the first thing that approached Vika was some pretty guy. At least the bartender was able to tell her how to get to the second floor, but he did it with such a pathetic expression on his face that it made her laugh. He didn't even realize how stupid he looked, especially considering the quality of the local drinks, music, and crowd. And after all this torment, Alexandra discovered her boyfriend in the company of 2 collective farm girls. "Hello, Hare!" Christopher quickly rose from his chair and kissed Vika on her cold cheek. "And in general, I'm waiting for you. Do you remember Oksana? This is Angelica, her friend." Alexandra nodded coldly and sank into the chair where Christopher had been sitting. Left without a place, the guy hesitated for a moment but immediately solved the problem by offering to take something for Vika in pairs. He had managed to treat 2 girlfriends before, but now he realized on the fly that his jealous girlfriend did not need to know about this. Compared to the broken Oksana and Angelica, his Alexandra looked like a rather modest girl. However, Christopher has already become familiar with her difficult character. She had a better figure than the 2 of them, and most of the girls in the club. Nevertheless, with all the external advantages of his girlfriend, there was something about her that was not very attractive. Unlike the sociable girls, Alexandra, with her frequent mood swings, sometimes resembled a capricious teenager. This time, alas, was no exception. When Christopher returned, Alexandra was already sitting in splendid isolation. When Christopher returned, Alexandra was already sitting in splendid isolation. When Christopher returned, Alexandra was already sitting in splendid isolation. She was not in the mood to dance, and the whole conversation boiled down to yet another brain teaser about the quality of the establishment, the music, and in general, everything around her. Separately, Alexandra went through his acquaintances and then switched to his Christopher behavior. "Take me home, please," he heard from Vicky. Under other circumstances, her plan might have worked, but now Christopher was seething. "You know," he said, getting up from the table. "I'll stay here, and you do as you wish." Alexandra opened her mouth but decided to remain silent. Noticing the hesitation in the girl's eyes, Christopher slowed down. "I'll go for a walk. How are you?" Alexandra did not deign to answer him. "Well, if you want to sit here, sit." Christopher turned around and walked down the stairs to the first floor. The anger quickly disappeared, but he decided to give Vika 5 minutes and return to her after. Here, Christopher once again came across Oksana and her friends. Angelica shouted something in his ear and, taking him by the hand, dragged him through the whirlpool of sweetie boaties to the very center of the dance floor. The girl was clearly the type who loves to rock and have a blast. While dancing, Angelica pressed close to him. Christopher readily encouraged this. If he sees Alexandra, let him be jealous, he decided. Angelica was wearing a white blouse and short denim shorts that did not hide, but rather showed off her curves. Yes, which did not hide, but rather exposed her form. Yes, she's much funnier than my Vicky, thought Christopher. I wonder what she's like in bed. He didn't object when Angelica grabbed his hand and literally dragged him off the dance floor. Following his new acquaintance, the guy found himself in one of the side corridors. She stopped, cast a quick glance at him, and pressed her whole body against him, wrapping her arms around his neck. Christopher responded by hugging her hot body to himself and kissing Angelica on the lips. She immediately reciprocated, pressing her lips to his. Other people kept walking behind them, but the couple didn't care. Angelica pressed her whole body against him, and her tongue actively worked in Christopher's mouth. Finally, they broke away from each other. Went. The seductress dragged him along again. Literally a second later, they found themselves at the entrance to the women's toilet. Angelica confidently opened the door and pulled Christopher inside. Luckily, it was empty. Angelica pushed the guy into the end booth and, smiling predatorily, knelt down in front of him. She started doing what he thought of as soon as he saw her. But after a couple of minutes, they were distracted by a scream. "Angelica, are you on your own again?" Looking up, Christopher saw through the slightly open door of the toilet stall Oksana, who was pointing the phone at them. "Hey, what are you doing?" Christopher tried to cover himself with his hand, but it turned out to be as hopeless as that of celebrities who are trying to hide from the paparazzi lens. Then, Angelica spoke up. "Shuka, what are you doing?" "I wanted to go to the toilet, at least close the door." Jennifer disappeared from a stall at the other end of the toilet. "You can't be left alone at all. You immediately attack the men. Fuck off, friend." Angelica burst out laughing and reached back to Christopher. For a split second, the guy hesitated whether to stop all this. He even seriously thought about going out to explain himself to this idiot. But Angelica, with her persistence, convinced him. As a result, Christopher, embarrassed, closed the stall door and latched the lock. Judging by the sounds outside, Jennifer had left. Angelica caught his eye. "Forget it. I want you." Christopher decided not to keep his random girlfriend waiting, and they made love right in that toilet. As soon as the pleasure left Christopher, he remembered that he had left Vika alone. How much time has passed? We need to return to her gently. His wandering gaze stopped again on Angelica. She straightened her blouse and kissed Christopher. "It's okay. You go. I need to get myself in order." Carefully looking out of the stall, making sure that there was no one outside, Christopher silently slipped out of the toilet. Alexandra was sitting alone at a table and trying hard to pretend that she didn't care where Christopher had disappeared to when this fat bitch from his department plopped down next to her. Vika didn't like either here or her friends from the very beginning. "Check it out. It's not yours doing this." With a poorly concealed grin, Jennifer took out her phone. On the screen, Alexandra saw a few seconds of video, apparently filmed in a toilet stall. Only hair was visible from the girl, but it didn't matter. Alexandra clearly recognized her Christopher, who was with some girl. Without saying a word, Alexandra stood up from the table. Jennifer looked at her with a satisfied look. She had her eye on Christopher for a long time, and his arrogant, narcissistic girlfriend frankly annoyed her. Vicky's first reaction was to find her boyfriend and start a wild scandal. However, when she went down to the first floor, she realized that this would not be easy in the noise of the club. The next decision was to go home immediately. A familiar route led Vika to a bar, and she literally ran into two guys, one of whom, the cuter one, tried to pick her up at the beginning of the evening. "Have you decided to try it?" The cute one shouted something in her ear, but the end of the phrase was drowned in the surrounding noise. Alexandra simply nodded in response. "You look good. I'm Nikita. And this?" Alexandra did not catch the name of his companion. For her, he remained second. She liked Nikita. Tall, athletic, stylishly dressed. But what was especially attractive was his confident, masculine, appraising gaze. "Alexandra!" she shouted back. "I want a drink," she added unexpectedly for herself. But he understood everything correctly, and soon the whole trio was standing at the bar. Having brought her thoughts to life with the help of a strong cocktail, Alexandra, out of habit, began to look out for Christopher in the crowd, but immediately stopped short. After what happened today, it's over between them. Now she will finish her drink, thank this guy, and go home. Or Alexandra looked at her companion again. He clearly noticed her gaze, and a satisfied grin appeared on his face. Alexandra was embarrassed and looked away. His friend leaned his elbows on the bar and looked at her intently and possessively. Alexandra turned her gaze again, now beginning to look at her drink. Taking advantage of the pause, Nikita suggested taking something stronger. A minute later, 3 tequila shots lined up on the bar counter. 2 guys and a girl clinked glasses and knocked over their glasses. The strong drink quickly went to Vika's head. Nikita clung to her and whispered something in her ear. One way or another, she willingly took the outstretched hand and allowed herself to be led away. Nikita walked first. His friend kept behind them. Walking along the corridor to the end, they came to a massive door, behind which began the private section of the club. The only guard is a stocky man with a beard like Marcus Aurelius. He nodded to Nikita and opened the door. The girl obediently followed her new acquaintance inside. Entering the next door, she found herself in a small room with dim lights. There was a leather sofa in the middle of the room, and against the wall opposite, there was a bar counter with many bottles. In fact, the dance floor must have been somewhere below them. It seemed that one could even discern distant flashes of multicolored lamps. More precisely, not the flashes themselves, but their reflections on the glass. The last guy to enter closed the door behind him. Nikita took a bottle of something strong and poured it into glasses. "Come on for our meeting." The men sat down at the edges of the sofa, leaving Vika a place in the middle. The alcohol spread through her body with a pleasant warmth. Alexandra wanted to lean back on the high back of the sofa, but Nikita stood up behind her and approached from behind. Having embraced the girl, he ran his hand through her hair, watching her reaction. Having met silent submission, he turned Vika towards him and kissed her on the lips. She readily responded. Their lips and tongues intertwined into one. Out of her peripheral vision, she noticed a second guy standing next to her and she felt awkward again. Nikita caught this look and whispered in the girl's ear, "It's not good to leave a friend alone. What do you think?" Before Alexandra could answer, his friend came close to them and brazenly lowered his palms below her waist. In another situation, she would have been indignant, but now another persistent kiss from Nikita drowned out all possible protests. His smell drove Vika crazy. She desperately wanted to be with this handsome man. In Nikita's strong embrace, the girl seemed to forget about everything in the world and completely surrender to her feelings. The guys didn't say another word, but acted like a single mechanism. Alexandra didn't even remember how the dress was pulled off her. She was literally sandwiched between strong male bodies. What am I doing? A slight chill of these thoughts ran through Vicky's head. She didn't understand what was happening, but she really liked what they were doing to her, and she completely surrendered to these feelings and these guys. It seemed that this was not the first time they had performed such a trick, because their actions were very coordinated. This made her relax even more. When they finished, the guys poured another one each, lounging on the couch. Alexandra politely refused. She was fine without drinking. Having come to her senses a little, she retired to a tiny toilet, where she cleaned herself up as best she could. Returning back to the room, Alexandra discovered that both guys had already disappeared. The guard silently escorted her to the exit. For the first time in her life, Alexandra was afraid to look into a man's eyes and afraid to see in them that contemptuous expression that is usually bestowed on girls of easy virtue. The guard, however, remained completely indifferent. The phone showed several missed calls from Christopher. Alexandra raised her finger over the callback button, but changed her mind. At such moments, she avoided conversations, preferring short messages. "Meet me at the exit." Christopher had been looking for Vika for almost an hour, fearing that she had somehow gotten wind of his pranks with Angelica. He was greatly relieved to find his girlfriend in a good mood. Judging by her slightly disheveled appearance, she had been dancing all this time. Alexandra was also glad to see her boyfriend. Literally rushing to Christopher, she wrapped her arms around his neck and, succumbing to a sudden impulse, kissed him. "Baby, I'm sorry I was wrong. Baby, I'm sorry I was wrong."